You've had questions, and he has the answers. Newly re-elected Mayor Matt Gentry joins us for episode 143 of the Love in Lebanon podcast. Mayor Gentry shares his thoughts on being elected to a third term and why there won't be a fourth. Mayor Gentry shares what's on his to-do list for the next 4 years. And yes, we talk water, and we talk the Leap District as well. Episode 143 of the Love in Lebanon podcast starts now.
Welcome to the Love in Lebanon podcast, highlighting all the great things happening in Lebanon, Indiana. Have an idea for an episode? Send an email to loveinlebanon@lebanon.in.gov.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Love in Lebanon podcast. I'm your host, Joe LePage. I'm the Community Development Director with the City of Lebanon. Kind enough to join us for this episode of the podcast is newly elected to a third term, Mayor Matt Gentry, here on the pod. Thanks, Mayor, for being here.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure and fun to join you over here, so excited.
We aren't too far removed from Election Day. Didn't see anyone on the ballot that was facing you. How do you feel about besting no one as being unopposed?
You know, I'm humbled that for the citizens of Lebanon to reelect me. I mean, obviously I was opposed in the primary, right? So the voters did have a chance there, and so honored to have the people's vote. And for the votes that didn't, you know, hopefully I can convince you that we're still going in the right direction. You know, being unopposed certainly lifts some of the stress you have on election night. You know, I always joke you just got to remember to go vote for yourself, and you'll be okay. But no, yeah, I appreciate everyone's support. You know, we did have some contested city council races, right? So that was something I was keeping an eye on and watching. But, you know, I think generally speaking, when you have a situation where people are unopposed, it kind of indicates that people are generally happy with the direction the community is going. And so that's reassuring and kind of, you know, let's keep things marching forward.
Do you ever look in the rear view, though, and know what it meant for you to run a couple terms ago when that first happened? When you guys went door knocking, door to door, weren't married yet, kiddos yet, all that stuff?
Yeah, my life's changed a little bit. You know, I was a single guy back then, so the only person I had to convince to do it was myself. I'm obviously now married, 2 kids. You know, 2 kids under 4. So yeah, busy time.
You talked about sleep. There's so much sleep. You're getting so much sleep.
A lot more sleep in reclining chairs, holding a baby than I was doing back then. No, but it's, you know, we still knocked on doors this time, right? In the primary, I still talk to people. You know, I still believe that's the best way to run a campaign is knock on people's doors, talk to people face to face, tell them what your vision is, tell them what the goals are. I mean, you look back and, you know, we've accomplished a lot, but, you know, I'm still motivated to keep pushing forward. And, you know, I've announced that, you know, my third term will be my last and final term. So I know for me, I've got to, you know, I see the checkered flag ahead of me, and I want to keep pushing and keep all that, you know, great momentum we have here in Lebanon going forward and really set the stage, I think, for whoever, you know, she or he, whoever will be the next mayor of Lebanon, and put them in a great position to keep Lebanon moving forward and keep succeeding here.
So if you said this is your third and final term, that's your final answer?
It is confirmed. People may have heard I've moved recently from North Meridian Street. I hated to leave it, but you know, those house when I bought one was a single guy. The walls have significantly closed in. We've added additional family members, and you know, kids have so many toys. It just started feeling very, very small. So luckily we've actually been looking for close to 5 years now. So we did kind of find something right after the election, which was great. So kind of moved in there, and we're able to stay through the 4th of July parade, which of course you have to if you live on Meridian Street. And the new couple that bought our house, they were very, very kind to let us stay through that. Actually, we invited them to the party, made sure that they could, you know, experience it. But, you know, I tell that story because, like, as we were unloading the house, right, unloading the garage where I keep all my yard signs, because I don't buy new yard signs every 4 years because they just cost a lot of money. They didn't even make it to the new house. You know, we drove by the old street department site and threw those suckers in the recycling.
Oh, you recycle?
Yeah, so they did not even make the trip. So they were on the trailer, but we had a midpoint stop, unloaded those signs. I kept a few for sentimental reasons, of course. But, you know, the 750 or 1,000, I don't know how many I had. Yep, they're off recycled, made something else these days, I guess.
Wow, so this is done and done.
Yeah,
done
yes,
and done.
Yes.
Everybody, we're talking with Mayor Matt Gentry, recently elected to term number 3. He has confirmed this is the final term for his time in office as Lebanon mayor. Unique perspective for you on election night, though, not necessarily having to look at the election results. As you mentioned, just vote for yourself and you're good. running unopposed. But the other races, were there ones that you were kind of keeping an eye on? You mentioned City Council earlier.
Yeah, I was watching obviously the Lebanon City Council races. We had a contested race in District 5, John Copeland's seat, and then also a contested race over in District 3, which was going to be a new person regardless. Councilman Jones was defeated in the primary, so we knew there was going to be a new person coming from over there. So I was watching those, was watching the other races happening in Boone County too. Obviously some down in Zionsville, they had almost every city council race contested. So I was kind of watching the results down there. And then also watching kind of the results in Whitestown and, other parts around the state, other mayors. I know, I'm a kind of a political nerd. So, election night usually is actually my Super Bowl. I get out the food and the drinks, and I love just watching those election returns. I'm probably wired a little different than most people, but yeah. So it was interesting. I think it's we saw some changes happen in other communities. Several communities around the state have new mayors. Obviously through the mayor's group, you meet other mayors, both parties, all that stuff. It's a nonpartisan group, right? So it's interesting. You definitely put faces, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna be tough for that person, or maybe they can use better off. So sometimes it's kind of interesting when you kind of see the bigger picture. But just really excited to work with the two new city councilmen we have coming on. Rob Hawkins at the at-large seat, and then Sandra Jasnowski here in District 3. John Copeland was reelected, by the way. That was a tease there. But so we'll have two new councilmen. So excited to kind of work with them, and we'll be getting them up to speed and help them understand kind of their roles on city council and what we do. It's kind of one of those jobs that people know they're city councilmen, right? But do they always necessarily know exactly what to do on a week-to-week basis? Maybe not, right? So there's always a learning curve there. But obviously we've got a great core, great group of people, city councilmen that all care about the community. And I think they're excited kind of for what we're going to accomplish. These next 4 years are going to be pretty pivotal, I think, in Lebanon's history. A lot of big decisions being made, a lot of groundwork being laid for really the next decades that are going to happen here in Lebanon. So a lot of important discussions, a lot of important work to do coming up in the next 4 years.
And everybody probably saw the bucket bequeathing with now Zionsville Mayor John Stair came in to your office, and you're able to give that to him, kind of shaking things up a little bit, shaking things up about how things have always been, that type of thing.
Yeah, I met with John a couple times after the primary election the first time. Obviously, wishing him success to win the primary. And he certainly is. He's kind of been on the other side, right? Obviously, as a newscaster, kind of like you back in the day, right? It's a little different on being on this side of the camera sometimes. But he's been great. A lot of great questions. He's got a passion down there for Zionsville. And, when we recently met, he was kind of joking that he may need my bucket just because, even already because he's known since July 4th, like me, right? Once you don't have an opponent on the primary, you're on the ballot for the general. That's the time they have to fill it. You're going to be in there, right? So you're essentially the mayor-elect. So he's really been boning up, diving deep into the what you got to do from a mayoral standpoint, how you approach it. And he's already getting the same pushback I did, 8 years ago, right? Like, oh, we can't do that. We've always done it this way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, kind of funny for me. He kept mentioning. I'm like, well, how about I just give it to you, John? Like, I think I broke the habit pretty quick here. There hasn't been someone paying a fine in a while, so I'm like, what? Let's just hand the bucket down. So he walked out with a bucket, a couple weeks ago, and I'm sure it'll be in his office, and hopefully has a similar impact for him, because I do know that was it was a small thing, but I do think it did kind of help change the mindset when I first came in, to really say let's take a hard look at this and say, what's the real reason we do something, and what's the best way to approach it going forward. So wish him all the best down there, and hopefully he doesn't have to collect too many fines for it either. So.
Any talk of taking his door off the hinges? Did you share any of that with him?
He didn't mention that. He didn't
your
mention
door's
that.
Still off. Your door's still off to this day.
It is still off to this day. Yep. Still down in the basement, right? So the next mayor can make a decision whether they want the door back or not. Yeah, no, he didn't mention that. So as you know, obviously working next to me, we get some characters. Sometimes they kind of wander into City Hall, and sometimes a door would be helpful, but at some level too, transparency is important to me, and I do think that's been valuable not just as a symbol, but really just as a emblem of what I stand for and what we're trying to do here. And having that open door of, when Kelly's at lunch and you're doing your podcast, I'm the one that answers the phone, right? Or I'm the one that pops out and says, "Get up with something." So, which, I wouldn't necessarily know if I had that door closed. So,
and it's hilarious when people call and it's, "Oh, this is the mayor?"
Yeah, they get confused.
Pick up my own phone.
I think sometimes people think that just by being a mayor, you automatically have, a staff of, however many people, right? But no, we run a pretty tight ship around here, right? The three of us handle kind of the office business. So yeah, it's been good. And like I said, it's really just reassuring to keep that constant interaction and just keep that openness and access. Cause I think that's really important. I think especially from a local, leader perspective, that people just want to be able to, they got a mayor, they got a problem, they can go straight to the mayor.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, as you may know already, we're talking with Lebanon Mayor Matt Gentry here on the Love in Lebanon podcast, and would appreciate your candor, your honesty, your openness, Mayor. Initiatives that you're looking forward to. Mm-hmm. You mentioned, seeing the finish line, but also wanting to be able to hand the baton off to someone. Is there any unfinished business or expectations, things you're hoping for in the last term?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things floating around my mind, right? I want to run through the tape, right? I want to accomplish some things. Obviously, the first term was very much downtown focused, right? Second term was very much quality of place, trails, parks. The LEAP district kind of got thrown in on there at the end. For this next term, really I'm thinking about corridors, right? That's a big thing for me, right? What do we do to improve the gateways into Lebanon? I think we've, in the past, have looked at that, of how do we try to improve those. And, the challenge was, hey, let's improve the gateways and that'll help the downtown, which I think, again, we kind of reversed it. So now we've got the great downtown, and I think we've got some corridors that could use some help, right? So how do we start strategically thinking about, what does the 32 corridor look like? What does State Road 39 look like? The state's approached us about relinquishment, which, that's a big discussion certainly to have. And I think there's a lot of questions, and I think a lot of data I think the city will need to gather before that's a kind of a discussion that we could really entertain, I think, from the state to understand, what does the community want to see. So I guess keep your eyes out. I'm kind of in the middle of crafting a survey to kind of reach out to the people and get their feedback. Obviously, we constantly hear about complaints about traffic on 39. So what do we do to improve it? The challenge is, it's a state road, right? So there's very little control we have over it. But if we relinquish it, or if the state hands it over to us, all of a sudden it is ours, right? So what do we do to solve those problems? So I think that's something that I think would be important to understand what the community wants, what we see going forward, to be strategic about that and manage that going forward. So gateways are on my radar as kind of that redevelopment of those. Kind of come up with some concepts of what are the strategic plans behind those. But also, January 1st, we'll have a new city court. So that'll put us in a position to really, I think, we certainly have amped up the code enforcement we've been seeing over the last few years. But I think there's more to be done. And I think that having the city court would be able to start, having more of an impact there. So that's certainly something I'm thinking about. And then, of course, too, I talked about it in my campaign as well, as trying to, back in early January 2020, I kind of announced my Light the Night initiative with more streetlights in the community. And something kind of happened there in 2020 that kind of threw some things off out of kilter. So kind of going back to that and really kind of go back to say, hey, what's our strategy about using street lighting to address crime, address just making community more connected, just more visible, right? Safer, right, for everybody. So those are some things. Certainly, I think there's some low hanging fruit there that we can kind of start that process, and taking a neighborhood by neighborhood approach. So kind of just doing more to kind of engage neighborhood groups and really kind of, again, setting that foundation of saying, hey, what do we want here as a local neighborhood, and not just, what does the city want, right? So I think those are all things that I'm kind of focused on. Of course, the LEAP discussions will always be out there. The water discussions will be out there. Those are all things that are kind of big picture items too. But, we're not slowing down on making Lebanon better as well too.
That sounds like a pretty full docket.
We stay pretty busy around here. Yeah. I probably won't get it all done. Obviously,
but get it teed up, like you said.
Yeah, and that's where I think too. When I came in, I think I was pretty I kind of thought there would be more things kind of in the works. And so I think that kind of was a little bit of a surprise to me. So I think trying to take, the right approaches to kind of set the groundwork that it's a warm handoff, right? And saying, hey, we started this, here you go. And if you like it, great. But if not, you can tweak it and make it your own too as well. But, there's some pretty, I don't think there's anybody that would be in this position of mayor that says, hey, 32 is perfect. The 32 corridor is perfect. There's no changing to happen at all. Leave it how it is. So it's trying to do those things that would be universally accepted and we can make progress on, and the future administrations can continue carrying that torch going forward. So,
and after you've hit the tape, after those things on your checklist are checked off, have you started looking 4+ years from now? Kind of what's maybe next?
No, I haven't. No, I always people ask me that. I get this all the time. What do you want to do after you're done with mayor? I'm like, I've got 4 more years to go with this thing, right? So, I'm trying to think about what I'm trying to do next month, right? I mean, I'm focused on what are we doing today. So, no, I'm not thinking about that at all. At some level too, I joke, I got to kind of figure out what I want to be when I grow up, right? I've been mayor since I've been 26. Older now, so trying to what do I want to do at the next stage? Because I'm 30. Well, do the math here, right, Matt? Yeah. 34 now, right? Yeah. So I'd be 38. Mm-hmm. So it's 12 years is a long time, right? And so obviously as mayor, I've certainly gained some skills and have experience could apply to a lot of things, right? So I'm a big believer in following your passions, and right now my passion is the city of Lebanon, and that drives me every single day.
Everybody, we're talking with Lebanon Mayor Matt Gentry here on the Love in Lebanon podcast. Joe LePage, your host here. Now, if you've read anything in the paper, if you read anything or heard anything on the radio or TV, it seems like you can't go a day without a Lebanon or Boone County water situation, and it's usually tied to LEAP, and it's usually tied to Lebanon. And you mentioned your door being off the hinges. Hearing the number and seeing the reporters and things that have come in and chatted with you about the LEAP district in general, the water, the kind of the Lafayette area, and some drama there, some things online that are not necessarily true, and maybe a little bit of education needed. How has this week been? And since the whole water discussion has really started ramping up and continuing to do so.
Yeah, and let me set the stage just a little bit. I actually give Mayor Lewis a lot of credit. When he was mayor, he recognized that water was a challenge for Lebanon specifically, but also for all of Boone County. And he actually kind of was instrumental in getting the Boone County water study kind of started, getting that completed, and understanding kind of what are our options, right? And that was, that's kind of where, if people ever heard rumors about a reservoir north of town, right? There were some other options about, putting in a new well field down at Abner Longley Park. There was some conversation around that. So, this has been an issue kind of floating out there in Boone County for a while, probably close to a decade now, honestly. And then kind of throw that on top of that, when I was appointed by the governor to serve on the water task force, State Water Task Force. And a big part of that was then kind of brought me in to understand that, Central Indiana as a whole has a water challenge. I wouldn't say it's empty, but, they can kind of see the bottom of the tank. Based on modeling, they would project that Central Indiana will be out of water for new development by 2050, right? So not so long away, right? Within 20, 25 or so years, they could be saying, hey, no more growth because Indianapolis area, we're out of water. So that's kind of where I've kind of been thinking about for the last, I was starting the water task force in 2018, I believe. Okay. I think 2017 or 2018 was my first term. So this has kind of been just underlying kind of the constant kind of, earworm there for me of, hey, this is an issue. And then when LEAP happened, and the governor came to me or I went down to the governor, and Secretary of Commerce was there too, and said, hey, here's our plan for LEAP. My first question was, hey, that all sounds great, but, where are we going to get the water from? Because Lebanon doesn't have that much water. And that was kind of my first concern I had when they mentioned it to me. So obviously with the investment the state's making, I think pretty quickly realized, hey, this could be a great opportunity for us to solve our water problem, right? And let's make Lebanon, 50-year, 100-year water secure, right? because obviously as industry comes in, water's going to be needed. And so the state's making a big investment here, and we can latch onto that, right? So that's something I've really been, diving into memorandums of understanding and water service agreements and really fun stuff to read, as you can imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Thrilling stuff.
Helps you sleep.
Yeah. But it's, it's important though, because it really is, water is our future, right? Water is the lifeblood of communities. And so making sure we have enough water, make sure the water's where it needs to be, make sure we have the pipes to support the water. That's all critical for us. So those are all things that are kind of like informing my opinion about this. And of course, now then obviously with LEAP, and they've talked about semiconductors as a kind of target industry, which are phenomenal. They pay average wages in excess of $100,000. You don't necessarily need a college degree to fill those jobs. You do need some training, but that can be accomplished. But they're very heavy water users, like very heavy, tens of millions of gallons of water a day. Water users. Certainly nothing we could do here. I mean, Lebanon. I mean, our max pull from our water supply now is close to 4.6 to 5 million gallons of water a day, right? So not anywhere near where it need to be. So that larger kind of solution would be needed from somewhere. And back in 2006, the state. There were some droughts in kind of the early 2000s, and the state said, "Hey, we need to look at this and how do we manage our water resources." The state is water is a state resource, and they kind of identified for Indianapolis, you need to either get water from kind of the Lafayette area, up on the Wabash River, or over by Brookville, near the Ohio River, right? So those are kind of the two prolific kind of water supplies that are somewhat close to Indianapolis. Obviously, Lebanon being on the northwest side of Indianapolis, that kind of brings Lafayette into the discussion more logically for us. And so, using economic development to solve, Lebanon's water problem, Central Indiana's water problem, it's kind of a win-win-win, right? So instead of having, ratepayers or the city of Indiana have to pay to fund a pipeline, using economic development, I think, is a pretty strong strategy to solve that. So, of course, the pipeline's contingent upon, one of these big users coming in. So, and there's also other discussions that are for less amount of water happening with providers to the east of us. So that's kind of happening regardless. So that's kind of where Lebanon will be water secure from that standpoint. So that's going to be, I think, by 2028, 2027. So kind of right at the end of my term, we'll be, connecting and make sure we've got the water going forward. So those are all things that, again, kind of are floating around in my brain, and things I'm trying to solve and kind of put all these jigsaw pieces together to make it all work.
I'm trying to think. It was a couple of years ago. I remember there was a group from Anderson that they were trying to create a reservoir near kind of where the
old mall used to be.
Yeah, the Mounds Mall. That was my first job. Worked at Foot Locker in that mall while going to AU. But I remember there was talk of having a reservoir there because of the water shortage issue.
Yep.
Now, communities like Shadeland up near the Lafayette area, Lafayette and West Lafayette, worried about the Wabash River being tapped and run dry, that type of thing. What can help educate the public in that discussion and kind of help them realize the sky is not falling, that the water potentially taken from up in that area is not that same water that they would see in the Wabash River?
I think the biggest thing is it has to be communication and information, right? Those are the two biggest things. And I think, I've been really pushing on the IEDC, really hammer them, saying, guys, you need to do a better job of talking about this, what, the water, the challenges with it, why it's important, but then also have the information, have the data to show them it will be okay, right? So they're actually in the middle now of doing these water studies up on some parcels up along the Wabash River that would, they essentially test the flow, right, and see, they can pull out a couple million gallons of water a day for a couple days, and they can see the change in the aquifer water levels. They can see the change. I think maybe not. They can't see the change in the river, but they can see the change in the aquifer, which is below the river. So they can kind of do those calculations and understand, what's the water supply, right? And it's certainly, we've, IDC's talked about numbers as large as 100 million gallons of water a day. It's a big number, right? It's hard to wrap your head around that, right? But the flow of the Wabash River is 2 billion gallons of water a day, right? So it's like 5%. So, and that's not including the 100-foot aquifer below the Wabash River that's all full of water as well too, right? So it's certainly a contentious issue, right? I understand that. I understand why people in Tippecanoe County are understandably concerned, to put it lightly. But I also think we have to trust the science, right? Let's let the hydrologists and geologists study this. Let's get the data back. And then once the data is back, and if it shows that it works, then great, it can work. But then if it shows it doesn't work, then okay, it doesn't work, right? So like, I just, I always just try to like, let's just everybody take a breath, right?
Pump the brakes, maybe.
Yeah, and you've got, it obviously doesn't help when us politicians get involved, right? We have, constituencies we're trying to represent, and I'm sure if you went up to Topeka County and said, hey, raise your hand if you're okay with sending water to Lebanon, no, right? No, that's our water, right? But but it's really, at the end of the day, it's not, right? So water is a state resource, right? So that's kind of where the state is involved with this, to say, hey, how are we managing these resources? Because Indiana is blessed to have lots of water. We have a lot of groundwater. We have very strong aquifers, and so managing that resource is very important, especially from an economic development standpoint, to provide people opportunities, right? Better jobs for them and for them, their kids, their grandkids, their families, all those things. So that's kind of why the state's involved. And so now the IFA has kind of taken over the lead on these studies. They've been kind of the leaders with water and wastewater in the city of Indiana. They kind of manage all of the federal funds that come with it, and I'm sure I'm starting to lose our audience here a little bit. But,
that's
where it's there's so many moving pieces to this that we could have done a whole podcast on just this water thing. So.
And maybe we should one day, especially when the findings come out, because that's the headline I saw was Governor Holcomb was talking about the third party coming in and being able to kind of shed some light, some expert light on this whole water discussion. I mean, and there are people that are jumping online and on different have formed different Facebook groups.
Oh yeah,
you'd be shocked to hear that. But having all the comments that are out there and the narratives and things like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
very very similar, I think, to what we saw when the LEAP just started going. Right, the commissioners had that meeting at Western Boone, and people were like, "Oh my God, the sky is falling. This is terrible." Right, and so the first thing you do is you start a Facebook group, right, and get other people that are mad about it too, and you all rile yourselves up, right, and so. They're kind of in that stage right now, which is fine. I mean, again, I understand it's a natural reaction. And so then again, that's where I think you have to have the communication and the information, just kind of like allay people's fears and just say, hey, this is a process, this isn't totally done, right? Because they're still studying it, right? So let's wait for the data, let's wait for the information, and then we'll move forward in whichever direction it says. So that's kind of where, obviously, I try to engage there to allay some fears. It's not going as well as it maybe did down here at first, but again, it's a natural reaction, and obviously, whenever as a society, right, when change is always hard, but especially when it feels like outsiders are coming in and impacting you, right, your reactions get very tribal, right? You get very it's us against them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just let's all think about ourselves as Hoosiers. Let's think about Indiana as a whole. Let's not just think about I'm a Boone County resident or I'm a Tippecanoe County resident. Let's think about the larger picture here. That's something I'm just trying to keep that in the conversation to varying levels of success, I would say.
And you have given the invitation to a lot of the different public and the folks that you interact with. But if folks have questions, they can reach out to you directly. They can come in through the door with no hinges.
Yep.
And all that.
Pop in. I mean, obviously, I get a ton of emails, so I do try to work through my emails as much as I can. But obviously, a lot of those things fly around. But I mean, more often than not, when I'm in the office, you get a phone call and Kelly be like, "Hey, Mayor, there's so and so's calling. You want to talk to him?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, of course, pass them through." Right. So, phone call is probably the easiest, just because it's emails, a lot of words, so you got to kind of put together to make it make sense. Whereas I'm a pretty fast talker, as you can tell, unless people have already slowed down their podcast speed for me. So I just I can probably communicate more in a 5-minute phone call than I could in a 10-paragraph email. So there's a lot of kind of words and thoughts floating around my head, and it's just kind of getting it all out. It's much easier. So yeah, if people have questions, I'm happy to chat about it. Stop by, give me a call. Emails are fine too, of course, and then also on social media, where I probably spend too much time as well too. But yeah, so always happy to have conversations and talk about what's going on in Lebanon.
Fantastic, Mayor. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you for being here on the podcast and your candor, your honesty with all this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the chance to be here. Again, I'm just honored to continue serving this city. I'm excited, motivated, and I feel like it's been a little while since you had me on the podcast. So I was kind of looking a little anxious, like, you're going to have me back here soon. So, glad to be back and excited. A lot of great things happening. A lot of work to do still, though. So we're going to keep pushing every day.
Excellent. Thank you again. Everybody, I'll put Mayor Gentry's email address and also contact info if you want to give him a call, that type of thing, or heck, stop by. I'll put the address for the municipal building as well. So you can just have any questions. You can stop in and have a face-to-face chat with the Mayor of Lebanon, newly re-elected Mayor of Lebanon. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Love in Lebanon podcast. More episodes are coming your way soon. Take care.